All right, so welcome everybody to Interview Breakthrough. So I'm going to talk to you about the secret sauce to acing your next interview. All right, so I know there's a lot of people who think, well, I don't need to prep for interviews because I'm not getting interviews yet, and that may be the case. But what you need to do is just operate in a place of I know it's going to happen, right? So I'm going to prepare myself for what is coming. So if you prepare yourself for these interviews, you keep applying for these positions, something will stick and you'll be ready. Because what happens a lot of times is people say, well, I'm not getting interviews, so I don't need interview prep yet. And then the interview happens. They get an interview, all of a sudden things start happening, and then they've got to rush to the last minute to start prepping. So you don't want that to be you. So I'm just going to give you some straightforward information about interviewing, and hopefully, when you go into your interviews, you'll have more confidence and you'll have more understanding of what is expected of you as a candidate. Some of these questions you've heard before. I am sure some of this stuff you have heard, but not everyone has heard it. And I have some different ways that you can go about answering different types of questions because I want you to be prepared. Because even though these questions are like, why are they asking me this? I'm tired of getting the same question. Well, this is a stupid question, right? You have to still be prepared to answer it in the best way that you can actually market yourself. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about today. Okay. So I am so glad to have you guys here. I know some people are still checking in. If you're coming in, a little bit late, just go ahead and let me know in the chat where you're checking in from. But we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. So I am Ashley Thomas. I'm a job search coach with Right Step Resumes, and I help promotion ready professionals escape their unfulfilling careers and build profitable brands and land those six-figure leadership roles or six-figure roles that involve leadership, but they're not necessarily, you don't have direct reports, but they're with those top tier companies. So a little bit about me, I have about 20 years collectively of recruiting experience, and I've recruited for different companies like nonprofit, medical devices manufacturing, automotive manufacturing, legal, and various other fields. So I've recruited for positions that are all over the corporate space, from sales, from your entry level positions on up to your executive level roles. So I like to use my experience because as a recruiter, I wasn't able to give you guys feedback and tips that would really, the way that I wanted to, because we had rules and restrictions and stuff like that. So I decided in my business that I was going to give you the behind the scenes and give you the secret sauce, give you the cheat code to things like resumes, all things job searching, from your resume, your LinkedIn profile, interviewing, and even networking. How do you get people to respond to you? So those are things that I support my clients with, and I'll give you more information later on how you can work with me if you want to join one of my group programs or if you want to work with me one-on-one. So I've had multiple media features. My advice has been featured in the HuffPost, in the Washington Times, the New York Times, all over. I've been on dice.com where my advice has been featured about, job searching, cover letters, all types of things. And some of the services that I offer include interview coaching, resume writing, LinkedIn profile writing. I will also coach you to write your own resumes. I do resume critiques and LinkedIn critiques. So again, I'm going to give you some information about how to work with me one-on-one or in a group. I do these trainings. I'm going to try to do them once a month. The last training that I did was on resumes. So now I'm doing interviews. So you can let me know in the chat what you want me to do next, and I'll see about putting something together for that. I do have a new product that I want to talk to you about. It is a program. So I want you to know in this session, I am going to be selling you something. Why else would I have you here? I want you to work with me. I want to help you achieve your goals in your career. So if you don't want to be sold to, this is time to go ahead and head on out. But we're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to get some resources. If you stick around to the end, I do have a freebie for you. Okay. So what you're going to learn in this session is how to prepare for your interviews, whether they're in person, whether they're virtual, you're having a video interview, regardless of your career level. So you can be entry level, even though mostly I work with people who are mid-career to senior level. But these tips can translate for anyone from entry level on up to executive level and across multiple industries, because I've recruited for multiple industries. I will teach you some tips on how to leverage AI in your job search so you can use it to research employers faster. And also, I'll give you information about how you can incorporate AI and things like that into finding your salary, what sites you can go to so that you can have more confident conversations around the money that you want. And I'll teach you some strategies for answering some of the most common interview questions. And then also talking about some ways that you can follow up, some questions that you can ask, and how you can get feedback and setting some of those expectations around feedback. All right, so action-packed training. That's what you're going to expect today. Okay. Like I said, I want this chat to be lit. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm talking at them. I want you to be involved in the conversation. So if you have the questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. All right. And then, ask your questions there. I do have a gift for you. I have a way for you to be able to sign up for my programs because I have an offer for one of my full-on job search programs where you can work with me from the start of the discovery phase of your job search on down to salary negotiation. And then I'll tell you how you can connect and work with me. I think most of you probably have found me at either on LinkedIn or you're on my email list. So again, I'm happy that you're here with me today. So one of the myths about interviewing is that your experience is what is going to get you the job. How many of you have felt that at one point? Put some ones in the chat if you felt like that, hey, I've got the experience for the job, so I should be able to get an interview. Yep. Yep, I felt that. I felt that because I'm like, look, I'm looking at your job posting. It says you need 5 years of experience. I've got 5 years of experience in this thing that you say you want. But that's not the only thing that's going to get you the job. It does not guarantee that you will get the job. There are times where I open up a position and I may have hundreds of people apply for this position. So that means sometimes the vast majority of those people are qualified for the job, but everybody can't get an interview. A lot of times it's about timing. A lot of times somebody may have a little bit more something than you. So just know when you are applying for these positions and you have all of the experience, everybody else does too. Okay. You're not the only one. I hate to say it, but you're not that special that nobody else has the type of experience that you have. So it is pertinent that you are able to pull those things out that are different about you, those things that how you offer the value uniquely. Because just because I have an engineer with 5 years of experience, I'm not going to get the same input from somebody who has 7 years of experience. The 5 year person may actually be better. So you do have to make sure that you're setting yourself apart because your experience alone doesn't guarantee you anything in your job search. Okay. So the truth about it is that when you're interviewing as an interviewee, you have to research and understand that employer's problem. So that is how you will know, like, okay, well, if this position is supposed to solve this type of problem, then that means that my materials need to show that I can solve that type of problem and more, that I've had success doing that thing already. Okay. They want you to show them, as the interviewee, you have to show them that you are the answer to that problem, that you know how to solve it. You know how to make them money. You know how to save them money. You know how to save them time. You know how to get more customers buying their products, whatever that value is. And then you have to be able to highlight that unique value. Of course, on your resume, that's how you get the interview. But when you're in the interview, you've got to be able to back that stuff up. So you can stuff and stack as many keywords as you want to in your document to get the interview. But if you can't back it up, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You won't land the offer. So you have to be able to speak to those things that are on your resume. So even if you're putting the keywords that are just trying to get in, just be careful because you're going to be asked questions about that. And we want to see that proof. We want you to be able to tell us what you actually did when we're interviewing you. Okay. Now, I want you to make sure that you're using the interview. It's just a two-way conversation. That's it. I know you feel like you're being grilled and interrogated, but it really is just a two-way conversation. Okay. It really is an opportunity for you to talk to the person about that position to make sure that it's the right fit for you. So going to these interviews feeling like, I need to find a way to rule these people out, because sometimes we get excited, especially when it's a company that we've admired for years. We really want to put our best foot forward and we want, pick me. I'm the one. But no, they need to be picking you too, right? So they have to, you have to be picking them too. You have to make sure that there's a company that you want to work for every day. Do you think you fit in with that team? It's not all about whether or not you fit in with them, but they have to fit in with your values as well. So ask those appropriate questions. You've made it to the interview already. Right. So all you've got to do is just validate the things that you put on your resume, confirm the things that you've put on your resume already. So how do you go about researching and networking? Like, where do you even start? All right. So I know sometimes people just aren't active on things like on sites like LinkedIn They're not, or social media, period. They're not really that active. The company's website, yeah, that's a go-to, but what company is going to put their dirt on their website, right? So they're going to put their best foot forward on their website. So you need to have other places where you review them. So start with their website and then work your way on. You can Google a lot of things about these companies. You can Google their news articles. Are they showing up in the news? So here are some places that you can go and what you're actually looking for. So if you go to the company's website, about that, I need to move this toolbar up. Yeah, so if you go to the website, you can gain insights about the business, the team. Sometimes they'll have pictures of the team. They'll have the About Us page. You can see their social responsibility pages. You can see whether or not their values, fit in with what you want. You can then go to LinkedIn. You can look at their company page on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, even on TikTok. You can find different, social media sites that you can find out what these employees look like. I like to go to the company page on LinkedIn, click their employees, find the department that I would want to work with, and then I want to see what people look like. Does anybody look like me? Do people look like they're happy? I want to look at their page to see, are they posting pictures of employees at events? What does that look like? I want to see if they're in the news for laying people off. It was a company that was in the news recently for laying people off and then blasting the fact that they were underperforming. So now that leaves those people with an opportunity to, now they've got to convince whoever's interviewing them whether or not they were one of the underperformers. So stuff like that would make me think twice about working for somebody. So, check Glassdoor, see what those reviews are saying. And then you also want to talk to colleagues, find people who used to work at that company. A lot of times you can ask employees who actually worked, who actually work for the company presently, but how likely are you to tell the bad truth, the hard truth about a company that you're working for, right? You want to keep your own job. So people may not be as willing to tell you things about the company that they're working for, but somebody who used to work there will probably be able to tell you a little bit more information. Try to gain insight, of course, from the recruiters and the hiring managers, but also tap into people who either work at that company or used to work at that company. The recruiters and hiring managers are usually those first points of contact, so people go to them first. So it may take longer for you to get a response, or you may not get one at all. But if you find somebody who works adjacent, maybe so you're a project manager and you find somebody who is another project manager, or maybe they used to work at that company as a project manager, that would be a person that you would want to ask that information. Okay, so remember that. Kind of, look at what the customers say about companies too, because the customers and the employees, like everybody can't tell the same lie. Okay. So, if everybody's saying the same thing and you look for those trends, look for things that are consistent when it comes to what they're saying about these companies, because some people, they can put on a good front. Pay attention to how you're treated during the hiring process, the application process. Are you able to ask questions? Is the person responsive that's been working? Because usually it's an indication of whether or not they like their job, whether or not they're serious about bringing you on as a candidate. I like to build relationships with the candidates that I was interviewing. All of my candidates had my cell phone number so they could text me, because it's easier for me to respond to a text than respond to a bunch of emails. So I didn't like to leave people hanging. And there are lots of recruiters out there like me. So don't let the stuff that's happened, all this ghosting, all this kind of stuff, don't let that ruin you when it comes to recruiters. Don't let it ruin your idea of it. All right, so here's a job description that I got from Amazon. All right, so it's an operations manager position. This is a real posting. So I'm going to show you how you can actually use AI, incorporate AI in order to figure out, is this the right opportunity for me? I need to know a little bit more about this company. Let's find, have they been in the news? What's up with the operations area of, of this particular, company or this particular group. So again, this is Amazon. It's an operations manager position. You see, I've outlined the key responsibilities and job elements, and then also basic qualifications. So this is where most people don't necessarily read a full job description, right? So you see, it's one page. There's a little bit more information, but it was more stuff about the benefits and, and all of that. But this fits on one page. You can take the time to read one page, because when you're finding the keywords that you want to put, in your resume and everything, most people go right here to your basic qualifications. These preferred qualifications, those are things that people are looking for too. So when you say you're reading it and you're saying, yeah, I've got, experience with lean techniques. I've got experience with process improvement or whatever. But if you don't have those keywords there, or you don't have the examples of how you've improved a process, or how you've tracked performance or implemented something that impacted performance in a positive way, then you're going to have a hard time in your interview because you can't back it up. So when you do the research and understand more of what that department does, what they're responsible for, you're able to incorporate those stories from your career history, into your document, but also into your career story. So again, I've given you some time to, kind of look over this job posting. And so what I want to do is use AI to research the company. So here's a prompt that I like to use when I'm helping someone prepare for interviews. So I'm a job seeker. I'm interviewing for an operations manager role at Amazon. Provide 3 facts about the Amazon operations team that I can use in my interview. Also, provide 5 pros and 5 cons from the employee reviews. Right? So this is a way that you don't have to go searching and scouring the internet for reviews. You can just ask ChatGPT or Claude or whatever type of AI that you want to use. Then you can get the information, 5 pros and cons, and then you also can get 3 facts, and you can use those facts to ask really good questions when it comes to your interview. So it looks like someone said they're having some trouble hearing me. Can everybody hear me okay? Put some ones in the chat if you can hear me okay. All right, good deal. Looks like everybody can hear me, so I am good, good, good. All right, so once you use this prompt, right, this is what the output is. You see there's facts about the Amazon operations team here. So now I can know, I know that that team is known for its extensive use of technology. They do a lot of machine learning, data analytics. They do things to optimize efficiency. They also have a customer-centric approach. So, they may talk about a lot about their customer philosophy and how they get people to, how they retain their customers, how they attract their customers, stuff like that. You can talk about that. They also have innovative practices. So if this team is automating their warehouses, they have Amazon Go stores, across the globe. They want to create a good shopping experience. So those are some of the things that you can actually speak to. Okay. All right. Am I still getting ones in the chat? You guys can hear? All right. So, okay, all right, good deal. All right, so then in the pros and cons, you look for the pros because we're always looking for the good stuff. A lot of people want to work for Amazon. A lot of people want to work for Microsoft, those big name brands, but you want to be looking at the cons too, because you see there's career growth opportunities, which is amazing. The compensation, that is one thing that a lot of people say they love about working at Amazon. And then there's a challenging work environment. So there, things are constantly moving, constantly evolving. So there's always something to learn. It's very fast paced. And then there's cutting edge technology. Again, like I said, all of the automation and all of those things are very important. And then they have a global impact. So it's very important that they be able to reach people all over the globe. So there may be some global interaction. So if you haven't had that type of experience, this would be a great way to get that type of exposure. But then the cons are saying the long working hours, that's a big thing for me, especially because family is important to me. There's high turnover. Why are people turning over? What are some of the reasons why they're saying that people are not staying in their positions? Why are they always hiring for the same types of positions over and over again? And then they also have rigid metrics. So while they say it's important for you to have, performance and also improve and, and all that stuff. Like, is this going to be something that you're willing to work towards? Do you want, are you going to be working in the ground? Right. So you want to know all those things so you can ask the types of questions. Like if they have high expectations, how do they handle it when somebody doesn't meet their expectations? Or how do they support you so that you do meet your expectations? Those are the types of things that you need to be thinking about, especially if some of these are the reasons why you're leaving your current position. You don't want to jump from the frying pan into the fire, right? So you want to make sure that you are walking into a better situation, but even if it does have its challenges, you're able to prepare for them. Okay. So does everybody like that prompt that you can use? I'll go back to it so you can see it. All right. So if you want to, you can screenshot it. go ahead and screenshot the prompt. But I'm going to send you something with with the prompts that we're talking about today. So if you didn't get a chance to, to grab it, no worries. I will definitely make sure that you get it. All right. All right. I'm going to go to the chat for questions. Let's see what we got here. Okay, yeah, Sonia said that the ATS tracking is the culprit. Yeah, that makes it hard to apply for positions. It makes it hard to get interviews. It really does. But there are some benefits to the ATS, and I think there's a lot of myths going around about the ATS anyway. So, a lot of the things that people are saying, like it auto rejects you and all those types of things, that's not what the ATS does. The ATS is really like just the storage for applications for candidate information. It's really like a database that houses the resumes once you apply online. Now, there are some that do rank you based on your match, to the position, but there are questions that a human may be putting into the system that you have to answer along with your application. And then that's a lot of times how you get the quote unquote auto reject. It's because it's a knockout question. If you ask if you have a degree, you have to have a degree. You say no, you're kicked out. So it's not that the system does it on its own. You've got to tell the system what to do. All right. So I say, wouldn't this information be outdated? No, a lot of, well, maybe some of the information may be, but what you're looking for is past performance. You're looking for different trends in the company. So it's going to speed up. So the information that you find, online, you can go to Glassdoor and get the additional information. So I wouldn't suggest using, the AI prompt and getting that information and using that just solely. You still want to do it as something to supplement your the information that you find, your research, the data that you gather. So I never would advise that you use it just by itself. You still want to research and verify the information to make sure that it is, as up to date as possible. Because sometimes you can look at the company website and they're not updating their information either. And some of the reviews that you find that are most challenging, they may be from the last maybe 3 to 4 years. So so that's going to be normal, but it's still information that's there that you're able to add to your collection. So would you advise that people ask how they handle people missing expectations? Wouldn't that make you think you're expecting to underperform? Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily. That's why I reframe the question. You don't ask how they handle people that are underperforming. Ask how do they support you to make sure that you meet your performance goals. That's what you more so want to understand. So I apologize for that. I misspoke there. But no, you don't ask the negative side of the question. You ask the positive. So how do you support me to make sure that I'm reaching my goals? And how do I know, is there a formal process for tracking goals? Do I have, set and clear expectations? Those are the types of questions that you want to ask. Okay, any other questions in the chat? All right, moving right along. All right, so when you're going into your interview, part of the process for you writing your resume is you gathering those accomplishments. So, in the interview, you can reference some of those same accomplishments. So you look at your performance reviews. If there are things that someone has said about you, say that there was, comments on your annual review, comments that you can actually, take snippets or quotes from those to share those within your interview, especially when you're giving the responses to, say, situational questions. You can talk about some of the results that you have gotten, and you have the verbiage directly from one of your managers. So those things are very valuable. It also can help you track your performance over time, so you can see how you grew. So if at one point you may have gotten a 3 in something, and then you were able to get a 4 or a 5 or 4.5, whatever it is, and you were able to improve that metric, you can give yourself credit for that and mention that in your interview. You also want to talk about your recognition. If you've gotten awards, so for instance, if you were applying to a sales position or applying to, say, a project management position, and you won some type of award for, winning a contract, or maybe in having the top sales results, things like that. You want to make sure that you're listing those front and center, and that you're able to speak to those in detail about how you were able to get the award, or how you were able to help your team, achieve that particular metric. So those are things that you want to talk about. Also, praise from your customers. If your customers are leaving reviews, they may have left it for the company, but they were talking about you. You can actually, mention those things, that you've gotten different types of, praises, kudos, emails, and reviews and things like that from your customer. So always track that information as well. All right, so some of the job interview basics, I want to talk about those. So these are ways that you can ace your interview regardless of your industry, regardless of your career level. So things I want you to remember, again, your interview is a two-way street. You should be asking questions. You should be interviewing them. You should be evaluating whether or not this is somewhere that you would actually want to work. Do I feel supported? Does the schedule work with me? Do I like the travel involved in this position? Am I okay working the hybrid schedule? Is this something that's going to help me for the next level of my career? You want to think about all of those things, and incorporate those, any of those concerns, any of those, curiosities. Make sure that you're involving those in the conversation. Your interview can either be virtual or can be in person. There may be opportunities for you to record yourself answering certain questions. So you want to be comfortable and show up on camera the same vibrant way that you would show up in person. It's hard for people to see, a lot of, gestures, like I move my hands and everything when I talk, but I make sure that that's off camera because it can be a little distracting. It can be okay for an in-person conversation, but not so much when you're online. You also want to make sure that your background, and things like that, that that it's clean. You want to have somewhere where you're prepared to talk. Is your internet connection okay? All of those things you want to make sure before you even go into the interview. Now you can have a standard interview where you're just either talking one-on-one with the recruiter or one-on-one with the hiring manager. You can have a panel interview. There are sometimes you are invited to interviews. I know I was, and I didn't realize that it was a panel interview. So make sure that you're asking those questions at the time of scheduling. What type of interview will this be? Who will be interviewing me? You can ask those questions because there's no reason why you should say, you know what, I don't know. I don't know who's interviewing me. You can get that information from the recruiter. And if for some reason there or whoever is setting up the interview, whether it's a coordinator, whether it's the recruiter or whether it's the hiring manager, make sure that you're asking those questions. Who will be there? What's the method? Would this be Zoom? Would it be Teams? Will you send me the information? Should I be expecting an email invite? Ask those types of questions. It may be even over the phone. I interview with my candidates over the phone because I know some had to sneak away and get in their car and do the interview. So I wasn't going to make them be on camera, and stuff like that through that conversation because it was more of just a screening, a get to know you. And then they had multiple interviews, after that. They interviewed with the hiring manager and then maybe had a panel interview with the team and then we were done. So again, it may be standard panel phone or video, or it can, be your in-person interview. Remember, guys, you already have the spot. You already earned the spot in the interview. So don't go into the interview feeling like for some reason you're less than the person that's on the other side. The only thing is that that person has to gather information about you so that they can take it and refer back to their team in order to make a decision. This is not a time for you to start second guessing yourself because if you weren't qualified, if you weren't good enough, you wouldn't have been invited. So you've already made it across the biggest hurdle by being invited to the interview. So know that you earned that spot. Your skills are good enough. You belong there. Okay. You belong right there at that interview. All you have to do is show, sell, and tell. Show them what you got, tell them your career stories, and sell the value that you're able to bring. All right, so some of the common themes that you will find across any type of interview, it does not matter what industry or or anything. It does not matter. You're going to be asked questions that can be from either one of these things. They may ask you a question that's around teamwork, communication, initiative, your adaptability, your problem solving, your leadership, your planning and organizing. All of the questions typically will fall under those types of categories, right? So, tell me about a time that you've worked with a team to solve a problem. How did you improve communication when people, how are you able to, to get approval for, some vendor contract, right? So that could be communication, that could be problem solving. So all of them come back around to these themes. So as you're looking at the job posting, you can use these themes to determine what types of questions you're going to be asked in your interview. So that can help you prepare for your interview as well. A lot of times that job description tells you, if it's a good job description, now I know there's some, there's some bomb, job descriptions that kind of tell you everything. And then there's some trash job descriptions that you like, I don't even know what this job does, but I'm talking about those decent job descriptions. You typically can really forecast what types of questions you're going to be asked. All right. So some of the common questions that you'll get in the majority of your interviews are the tell me about yourself interview question. Why should we hire you? What are your salary expectations? What are your weaknesses? They may even ask you, what are your strengths? They may not word it this way. Now they'll word it various ways. There's multiple ways that these questions can be asked. The tell me about your question, tell me about yourself question could be asked as, walk me through your resume. It could be asked as, to share something interesting, about yourself. It could be something, along those lines, but either way, you still have to be able to sell or pitch. So sometimes it could be your 1 minute pitch. It can be your career value statement, whatever it is that you want to call this. It all comes back around to tell me about yourself. And you need to be comfortable talking about who you are, what you do, and how you add value. Why should we hire you? Same thing. Why are you interested in this position? All these different questions that they'll ask, you need to be able to communicate what you know, what you've learned about the company, what you know from your research and everything, and then how you align with that, how you solve that problem. That's the biggest thing that you're focusing on, is how you solve that employer's problem. The salary expectation, you got to get comfortable talking about salary. People are going to lowball you. They're going to lowball you. Unless they tell you this is the best and final. Typically, there's room for negotiation. A lot of times I went into the offer conversations knowing that this person was going to counter. So make sure that you understand what your market value is, because just because you're able to make more money, or they're offering you more money than you were making at your previous job, it doesn't mean that they're paying you what they should be paying you. Because just because you were making, all right, I was making 95 at this job, they're going to offer me 110. But what if you find out that your market value is really 130? And you get to work and you find out that there are people with less experience than you that are making 130. In order for you to avoid that, you want to research and find out, what are people with my skills, with my certifications, with my knowledge, with my experience, what are working at the types of companies that I've worked for, what is the going salary for that? And so you can find typically the minimum, the medium, and then the max, and get somewhere in between. It's not going to get you exact, but at least you have a range of with a 10, maybe a 10, 15K variance that you're able to say, okay, this is what my market value is. So when I'm interviewing or applying to these positions, I know that I need to stick around this range. And usually I know some people get really upset because they see those ranges on the job posting that may be 75,000 up to 250,000. Well, that's a big old range. So you don't know, like, well, where do I fall within that? Most of the time throughout my career, and I'm not saying that I know every single thing. I'm just one recruiter, or one former recruiter, coming to bring this information to you from my experience. Okay. So typically what they do is stick around the midpoint. So they'll give you the minimum and the maximum of that actual range, not what they're budgeted for. Because at the companies that I worked for, we didn't have any control over how the salary showed up. So it showed the entire range. So it might have said, that it will go from 115 up to 185, right? But the company was only able to pay around maybe 130, 140, 150, somewhere in there. So what you want to do is add the minimum salary with the maximum, add those together, divide by 2. That's going to give you the midpoint. Give yourself wiggle room, 10K below that midpoint, 10K above. That's going to be likely where those positions are going to pay. And then you look and see how your salary aligns in that. Okay. So just make sure, if you see that big range, you probably need to figure out what that midpoint is. But typically, if it's going to say something between, 120 to 130, well, that's a tiny range. That's probably what they're budgeted for. So different companies have different parameters for how they list the salary. So not all the time are they trying to get over, but the ones that are listing 0 to 1 million, come on now. So, you can pretty much tell the ones that are playing in your face. All right, so tell me about yourself. I'm going to give you a sample response for that. So remember, I said this is, a combination of maybe your career branding statement or your value statement. And so you want to be able to express why you are the perfect person for this role. So here's an example from someone that was working in communications, and they actually incorporated how they did their research. So I'm a communications professional with a knack for persuasive storytelling. My thoughtful and engaging marketing presentations help them drive web traffic as much as 75%. And now I'm looking to shift into social media marketing, where I can help startup companies like yours grow their businesses and express their missions in a relatable way, right? So you see how this, in this statement, you're able to tell what the background is, express that you know what the company's problem is, and how you are able to help them through that problem, and and make sure you're incorporating results in there. So this is a simple way for you to just kind of plug and play your information. Of course, you've got your audience, you've got to know what your specific value is, but you know that because I've had you research your accomplishments. Okay. um, we call it a 1 minute pitch, but your answer doesn't have to be 1 minute. 20-30 seconds is about all it should take for you to be able to answer to tell me about yourself. If they're asking you the question of walk me through your resume, you're going to start with your older experience and work your way forward, but you're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that older stuff. You're just going to have a cohesive statement that's going to talk about how you were able to gain the experience during that time, and then how you are using that experience now, that you have currently. You're going to use that in combination with to help you add value to the particular company. So just remember, you're always adding that value in there. You're always pitching, you're always selling, you're always marketing. So this is a good example. If you want to screenshot it, you can. All right, why should we hire you? So this is, again, this is what this person would, as a social media strategist, this is how they would answer the question. It's mostly going to focus on how are you setting yourself apart from the competition? What makes you different? What makes you special? So you can say, when I read your job posting on this, for the social media strategy, I knew I needed to apply. And this is something you can incorporate in your cover letter as well, if you wanted to submit that, or your networking email. I researched your Facebook and IG accounts, and I noticed that you had the highest audience engagement when you posted videos. So again, that's that research. You were researching that company's page and you discovered this thing. All right. Since I have 7 years of experience in video production, I'm looking forward to developing campaigns that grow your follower base, drive traffic to your site, and increase product sales. So they're talking about the problem. They noticed something that could be fixed. And then they're showing how their skills, their experience, their value will actually produce a certain result. Now, I was able to use something very similar to this when I got my job as an HR generalist. At that time, they did not have, at least I didn't see one. I mentioned that in my panel interview. I didn't see that you had, that you had an ATS. I have been involved in the past of helping companies implement their ATS into the hiring process, and I definitely would be open to doing that for you. I would research the companies, have demos, and then talk to you to see how the systems actually will work with our budget, and also with how we want to attract our applicants. And so in that, that's exactly what I did. I got the work and I got them an ATS, and they're still using it even, for 5-6 years later. So you always are thinking about how you set yourself apart from the competition. All right, so what are your salary expectations? Now, in certain states, it is illegal for companies to ask for your past history, but it is not illegal everywhere, okay? It is illegal in some states not to post the salary on the posting. Okay, not to list the salary there, but that's not true for everywhere. So every company is not going to do this. So you may not know what the range is. So again, that's why your research is so important. All right, so here's a sample of how you can answer the question, and I'll give you some different variations of it as well. So it's basically, how much do you want to make? How much is it going to take to bring you on board? So I'm open to discussing what you believe to be a fair salary for this position. However, based on my research, previous salary, my industry knowledge, coupled with my understanding of the roles as we discussed, I expect a salary in the range of this to this, right? So this could be your 120 to 130. It could be, I'm open, and then you share that you're open to discussing and, and maybe negotiating when there's a formal offer. Now, you can ask it in a different way. And you can say, well, based on my research and the types of positions and, based on other positions that I'm interviewing for, the ranges seem to be around this. So I feel like that would be acceptable for this type of position, but I'm open to negotiating as we get further along in the process. Right? So you're not pinning yourself down. Whatever you do, I suggest to give a range. So some people say, well, you don't give a number at all. A lot of times when you're talking to these recruiters, you are not going to make it to the next step if you don't at least agree to the range and agree to the fact that you're okay getting a salary offer within that range. So if I'm telling you that the position is going to pay 160 to 180, you're not, if you come back to me with a counter for 200, you're not going to get it. Right? I've already told you what that range is, right? So you can ask, what is your range? What's budgeted for this position? You can ask those types of questions, but you need to already know what your range is. What is your desired range? And you also need to know your walkaway number. You need to know that. So if they fall below another number, you need to be confident enough to walk away. So salary negotiations a lot of times is based on confidence. I can a lot of times look at somebody's resume and tell whether or not they're going to negotiate. I can talk to them in the first couple minutes and I already know whether or not they're going to negotiate or whether or not they're going to be a strong negotiator. I can tell all of that by the questions that you ask. So just because somebody tells you that there's a range, you can still have the conversation, but that initial conversation really is not for you to negotiate. That is for you to set the tone to see if you want to move forward. Because if I go to a restaurant and I know that I want to, or I go to a clothing store and I want to buy a shirt, I know I'm willing to spend $20 to $30. If they tell me that it's 50, I already know what my walkaway number is. So the same things happens with the salary. Now, if you need the job and you need some money to come in, by all means, take the job. But I want you to keep looking when you find that job that has the salary, that has the work schedule, whatever it is that you want to, that it falls into where you feel like is valuable, where you feel like is, acceptable compensation for what you're bringing to the table. So again, if you need the job, take it. But if you have an opportunity to sit it out and wait and you know your walkaway number, you got to do your research first because that's what's going to set you up for it. All right. So if you get the question, what are your weaknesses? I don't want you going in there really, saying that you don't have any weaknesses because, I don't like this interview question for one thing. And I often asked it in a different way to say, to share with me some ways that you were able to improve processes or that you were able, to approve or you took some advice or feedback from someone and you were able to do something better. Right. So I may ask it in that way. That is to get them, because that's what I really want to know. How self-aware are you? And then also, are you able to take that feedback and make good of it? Or, do you get down in the dumps and think that you know everything and that, you're a know-it-all and, you don't want to hear from other people or whatever. So, think about where you improved in something, how you shifted it over to the positive, and that's how you're going to answer this question. So, think about what you're good at now, but you're good at it because you were able to improve on it. So, you can start with that's a great question. In the past, I took it personally whenever I received constructive criticism. I always did my absolute best. So I thought that meant that my hard work wasn't good enough. So with coaching from my supervisor, I learned that feedback about my work was a ticket to me growing as a professional. Now I seek this information and use it to my advantage so I continue to improve my skills. So this shows that self-awareness, like, look, I used to get in my feelings about this stuff, but now, as I grew throughout my career, I'm able to actually use that and get better. At one point I had a hard time, and the example that I gave in a lot of my interviews was I have a hard time getting to a stopping point. When I'm working on something, I want to check everything off my list. I want to get it all done before I shut off for the day. And a lot of times that frustrated me because I often worked late. I worked sometimes after hours. I'm trying to get everything checked off my list. So I realized that there are things that are my priority that have to get done in that day. But just because I didn't finish it in that day, that did not mean that I didn't perform well. So I stopped associating the fact that, okay, this should wait for another day because it's not as important. I started associating that with, okay, I'll move it on, to the next day so I can better prioritize. And then I can, have peace and balance as far as my time. So I was able to improve that throughout my career. Now in my personal life, I want to check these items off my list, but I always go back to, okay, what needs to be done now? So that's an example of how you can answer the weaknesses question. Because I don't want you to feel like, oh, well, I don't have any weaknesses. No, think about an area where you improved on it. And then talk about why you improved it and how you improved. So it's always like, how did I go from good to great? And that's it. Everybody has an area where they need to improve. So instead of you seeing it as a weakness, see it as an area of improvement. All right, let's look at let's see, do we have any questions in the chat? All right, I see a few questions. Okay, so someone said I have to learn how to express myself when I'm interviewing. I'm more of a show person, and so show what I can do. I'm type of person, so I get anxiety with questions like that. Yeah. So I have anxiety too. I have anxiety around a lot of stuff. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be criticized. Like, oh, they're going to laugh at me, whatever. I feel all of those things rushing into me when I'm interviewed, especially when I'm interviewed for like a major publication. If I got to do a podcast or, or whatever. I really get nervous, but I have to settle my nervous system. I have to take a step back, take a deep breath, and understand that the people need the information that I have, that people need my help. So that I am only proving to them that I can help them. That's it. I'm showing them or telling them how I can help them. So that helps you sit from a place of confidence. They are reaching out to me because they need my help with something. Okay. So I'm not the only one campaigning for them. They're campaigning for me as well, because they need me to help them with something. I have earned my spot. So that is how I, sort of ease myself, calm myself down, and remind myself, like, look, I deserve to be here. Okay. I deserve to be here. So here's another question. Tell me about a time that you cost the company money and how you overcame it. So in that particular question, what you will focus on is think about something that you were paying for, and then you found a way to get rid of that cost. So for instance, if when we were implementing that ATS, actually had charged us full price, right? So I think at that point, I was trying to find, because they were going to cut the ATS off and have us going back to receiving applications via email. So what I did was contacted that vendor and explained that we were actually a nonprofit organization. So and asked whether or not we can get something approved, even if it was for short term. I asked if we can get something approved for for a nonprofit discount, and we ended up getting that ATS at a monthly rate that was 50% lower than the regular rate, just because I was able to ask about that. But I did have my company pay full price that first month, but then I was able to negotiate and get that pricing down. So you can talk about something like that, so you don't necessarily have to say that, oh, well, I pushed a button and then it blew something up and I cost the company money. It doesn't really have to be that drastic. Just think about it from an area of, okay, well, I saved the company money doing this, or maybe I didn't do all my research that I needed to do, because I should have asked that question first, before we signed on, but I didn't think about it until they were about to pull the plug on it. So, that's a way that you can answer that question. I hope that was helpful to you, Teresa. Let's see. Okay, so how do you handle entering the salary when there's a field in the application that forces you to enter a number? You can put zero. You try to put zero, you put $1, whatever it would accept. You put something that's just crazy low. Like I would have people put $1,000 there. The recruiter is always, if your application is a match, because that could have been a typo. Sometimes people put $1 million in there, or something like that, which would force me to have to ask them and reiterate it once I got on the phone with them, because if their experience was a match, I was going to interview them anyway. That one little technicality shouldn't stop you from getting an interview, and if it does, you don't want to work there anyway. So there's that. But yeah, you typically can put zero, $1, or you can put something drastic like $1 million in there, so that you don't get yourself locked into the pay. All right. So I get questions on why did you leave your last employer and why the short tenure? However, it was a company layoff. And at that time, the company was, I was only at the company for 4 months. How do you spin it to something positive? So you really don't have to spin that necessarily into a positive. If I ask a candidate why they left their last position and they tell me they were laid off, that is what it is. That layoff was not, and you can just reiterate like, hey, my last, because I was laid off and it wasn't my fault. And I only had stayed at that company, for less than 2 years. So for me, that was kind of a blemish, because at that point, in time, this was 2006, people were staying at jobs 5, 6, 7 years. And so with me having that, a short tenure at the job before, and then a short tenure coming up because I was laid off, I often got asked that question: why did you leave your last position so fast? And so what I would say is that the position that I had initially was entry level, and I had an opportunity to shift over into an actual recruiting role. So I accepted that contract. But then that contract they let me know ahead of time that it was not going to be renewed, and that I was going to have to, go ahead and it probably would be a good idea to go ahead and start finding employment, because they didn't have a full-time slot for me, but they would call me back if they did. And they did call me back, but I was happy where I was. But anyway, and then once I was laid off, from the position, I explained that it wasn't due to my performance, that we were laid off due to a shift in the, in the organization. And it was also helpful that that company went out of business later on. They were bought out. So that was more evidence of the fact that they were going through financial troubles, but it had nothing to do with me and my performance at all. But that is a great, great question. So when you're asked why you left your last employer, if it was a toxic work environment, right? Don't talk about the fact that it was toxic. Talk about the things that you want in your next role. So you can say that it wasn't a fit, for you, that you signed on to the position. It wasn't, and you determined after some time that it wasn't quite a fit because you noticed that you had limited opportunities for growth, limited opportunities to work cross-functionally. And after reading your job posting, it mentioned doing those exact things. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to grow my career. So there you go. Now you've got an opportunity there that, I left because, it wasn't a fit. Now, you have to have a lot of confidence when you're answering these types of questions, because how confident you are will determine whether or not the person thinks that's a good enough answer. Because otherwise, I'm like, so now I'm about to start digging because, this sounds a little fishy, and you seem a little skittish when you're answering this question. So remember, confidence is king in everything when you're answering interview questions. All right. So, how would you handle when there is a gap in your resume? Also, what would you say when you are switching industries that are very different? So, I'll address the second part of your question first. So, if you are switching industries that's very different from what you did before, then you would want to make sure that you are focusing on your transferable skills. What skills do you have that translate into that new industry and that align with your job target? So if you are say, and I'm just going to use the basic, a project manager working in healthcare, and then you want to switch over to maybe doing project management in tech. Those are two different things. But if at that healthcare position, you worked a lot with system integrations, you worked a lot with those different things, then you can use those examples to show that you are qualified to work in that tech space because you worked on tech rollouts, because you did the data analysis. You had to work on the security team and you worked alongside IT, to develop or build out that application. And that you're responsible for monitoring that system and tracking that progress, of that. So you can take that experience with you to another field so that can translate into tech. So it really just depends on what you were doing before and then what you're trying to shift into, and how you can, draw those parallels between what you did and then what you're prepared to shift into. Because for me as a recruiter, I've worked in multiple industries. So I have to focus on the value that I bring from a different aspect, right? But showing that I could do this job or I can learn whatever new system, that it is. And that's how I was able to, shift into medical devices manufacturing when my background was in automotive manufacturing. So that was a little bit different. And then I was able to take the automotive manufacturing experience and shift over into nonprofit. Right? Those have nothing to do with each other. But the fact that I had I could use my transferable skills, I was able to land that role. I had to use my transferable skills from the working in the pharmacy to get my first HR job. And that's because I focused more on the customer service aspect of what I was doing. I focused on the confidentiality piece. I also focused on my consultative approach that I had with people at the pharmacy, and really the, processes and maintaining policies and procedures and those types of things. And I was able to land that position, but I had to find the parallel between the two. All right. And then the second part of your question was, how do you handle a gap in your resume? Well, it depends. Sometimes, so I would consider a gap that's anything longer than maybe 6 months to a year right now. So if you have that gap, and say you haven't been working since 2023, sometime in maybe July of 2023, and you haven't been working since then, I would think about some of the things that you've done to fill the gap. Were you helping to care for a family member? Were you homeschooling your children? Were you volunteering at an organization? Did you take any training? Did you start school? Whatever it was that you did during that time. And you can list that as a position, not only on your LinkedIn profile, but you can do that on your resume as well. But you want to just tell what happened during that time. If you were having a hard time finding a position, or you moved, or, or whatever, you can incorporate that reason, but you want to quickly move into what your focus is now. What are you focused on doing next? So always keep the conversation focused on the positive. All right. How do you avoid age discrimination when you're being forced to put dates of your college education? So really the issue with ageism is not necessarily the age itself, right? So we know they're looking at the age, but it's because they're making an assumption about you because of your age. So when you're forced to put the college education year in there, um, you can put the date there, but focus more so on your innovation and in other areas, because that may be something that you can't get around. The same way that you may not be able to get around them seeing your picture on LinkedIn, right? Finding you on social media. So they may be able to still see that information. But if you're trying to avoid ageism, then you want to make sure that you are um, showing that you're up to date on technology, that you're doing improve your skills. Like for me, I have a resume writing certification. And so I have to take training consistently in order to keep that certification. So although I got that certification in 2016, resume writing has changed since then. The job search has changed since then. So I have to take trainings periodically to grow my skills. So you want to make sure that you're making mention of the things that you're doing to innovate, to stay ahead of the curve, that you're staying abreast of, any new technology, and you know what's happening in your field. But yeah, but that's something that you probably won't be able to avoid. You could put a fake date in there, but then that would make me think, too, that you hiding something? So just make sure that whatever you do, you are confident enough in your other areas of innovation, that your email address is not AOL, it's not Yahoo. Those are things. So Gmail is the gold standard for emails. You can have Outlook, you can have live.com, you can have me.com, whatever that is, but you want to stay away from emails that are associated with your cable provider or your internet provider. You want to stay away from older email platforms, again, like your AOL, your Hotmails, and all that. So some of you kind of hanging on to those emails from years and years ago because you got stuff. Go ahead and change it. And even if you don't want to change your actual email, get the Gmail email address and just forward it to your email. That way you can hang on to your same email, but what you're sending from is another domain. All right. So how do you know where exactly they need your help in the particular HR role, especially in roles like HR, where internal things are not available to the public? The posting. So if they're needing you, so say for instance, this position handles payroll, handles benefits and stuff like that, then you know that that's going to be a problem. They want to stay within compliance. They want to make sure that people are paid on time. So you talk about the things that you've done to innovate by way of payroll, benefits, whether even it's employee relations, employee engagement. You can talk about the things that you've done that coincide with the areas where they said that the person needs to be qualified, because the job description is the recipe for the problem. They're telling you exactly what they need help with. So it's not like they have a problem like, oh, stuff is on fire in here. Like, yeah, they're not going to tell you about those situations. But if they're hiring somebody with a specific focus that is payroll, employee relations, or whatever, you can assume that the problems lie within those areas, especially if they don't have somebody to fill that gap. So you talk about your success in those areas. All right. So how many questions should you plan to ask the interview panel? That's going to depend on timing. And you also got to read the room. You can tell when people tired of you asking questions. Okay. So don't feel like you got to get it all out. You got to think about timing. So if it's a 1 hour interview, you want to make sure that you are keeping up with the fact that this is that okay, I'm down to the end of it. They ask, do I have questions? Maybe you get your most pressing, 2 to 3 questions out, or maybe 1 to 3, and then any other questions that you have, use that as a way to follow up after the interview. Okay, you can send your question within your thank you. That way, you keep the dialogue going with either the hiring manager or the recruiter, whoever it is that you have that contact with. So when you send that your thank you and say, yeah, and I want it to be respectful of your time, but I do have these questions. And again, you want to limit it to your most pressing questions, because that's not the only time that you can ask questions, right? So then you can follow up. If you haven't heard anything within a week, follow up, and then you can ask some additional. So you don't want to, just bomb them with all of your questions at once. You can split them up and ask them at different phases in the process. But yeah, it's just going to, depend on timing. But I say pick your 1 to 3 pressing questions and go with that. But you're not going to ask them run of the mill questions. Why do you like your job? Why does it matter why the recruiter likes their job, right? They're not even in your department. You want to take that time to ask questions that help you understand what you're getting yourself into. So don't ask the questions about benefits. You have time to find out about the benefits when they offer you the job. They'll send you the benefits information. Don't waste the time asking stuff like that. And you also have to know who you're asking the questions to, because certain questions are more appropriate for the hiring manager than they are for the actual recruiter, right? Because the recruiter doesn't do the day to day, and they may have limited knowledge compared to the hiring manager about the day to day. So the best thing to do is ask the hiring manager those types of questions. Like, what does a typical day look like? What are some of the immediate challenges that you're looking to solve within the first 90 days? You would ask that question to the hiring manager, not to the recruiter. But if you had a question about benefits, say you wanted to know if they allow rollover for 401k, or if they match, 100% or dollar for dollar or whatever, then you want to then ask the recruiter that type of question, because that's an HR adjacent type question. Questions about salary, you're going to talk to the person that you initially talked about salary with. So just know who your audience is, but there are multiple phases where you can ask questions. Switching industry. So I started in communications and switched to education, but now I'm looking to switching back into communications and marketing in the corporate space. This issue is the first comms job was 15 years ago, which I was told that experience was should be left off the resume. Right. So you wouldn't list information from 15 years ago on your resume as a job listing, like the way that you would list it in your experience section, but you can bring to the top of your resume a highlights section, so that in that just a few quick bullet points, and you can recall that information. So say you worked for Nike 15 years ago doing communications and marketing. You can say that you worked for a major retailer doing blah, blah, blah for communications, and you were able to drive sales. You were able to, improve the social media presence, whatever it is that you did. Well, 15 years ago, probably social media wasn't popping like it is right now, but you want to talk about those things that, that you did. And that way you can get credit for the type of successes that you had without putting a date to it. All right, what's your opinion on companies asking you to do case studies as part of the interview process? So first of all, I'm probably not going to do it. I'm just being honest with you. But in those particular cases, I would just be really sure that that is a job that I want to do. And when I'm doing my case study, I'm not going to use information that they could take and apply it for themselves. So I'm going to try to give them the details that they need, but be vague enough that they can't take my information. They don't have enough to work with. So I'm not going to give them all of the sauce, but I really wouldn't be doing case studies unless I absolutely wanted that job. If this is something that you kind of, I'll take it if I want, I feel like you have two choices. Either your answer is hell yes about the job, or it's no. There's no in between. No in between whatsoever. So I would say that if you're doing, if you're trying to decide whether or not you want to do the case study, make sure that they're in that hell yes category, because that's when you're going to know it's worth your time. All right. So I've worked for the small companies for the past 17 years, and I wore a lot of hats. And I'm trying to get into a larger company, and I'm having trouble. So you want to be networking. Applying may not help you, applying online. So you may have to reach out to contacts and make connections with people who do what you do or do what you want to do at the companies where you want to work, right? You want to try to get in some way and get referred. Ask, do they have a referral process for incentives? Sometimes employees can get $1,000, $2,000, sometimes up to $5,000 for referring somebody, right? So you want to see if there's any way that you can get in sort of through the back door. You may not want to reach out to people on LinkedIn. You may want to use these email finders to find a way to email them directly at work, because everybody's not active on LinkedIn. So there you go. So that's what you would have to do. You could, try to do that to get in, but without knowing the very specifics, I wouldn't be able to give much more information than that. So you were willing to discuss your salary on there, and since then you've passed and bypassed the hiring manager for a cold call. And on the final round interview, do you think they'll speak about it or just make me an offer in their range? They more than likely will make you an offer in your range, because regardless of what you put in your salary, we're working within a range. So they'll probably make you an offer, but the expectation typically in my experience is that they'll be ready to negotiate. Personality tests are okay. Somebody asked about what I thought about personality tests. I've completed a couple back in the day and I never hear back. Yeah, so personality tests, I think, I'm okay with them just depending on the length of them. We would give some form of personality test in some of the jobs that I had to interview for and recruit for. And it was really just to see how you fit in with the team, how you aligned with, they used high performers to set the bar. And then they wanted to compare to see how you matched, the typical high performing employee in that, in that role. So it may be something that, you can ask for those results and just see what your personality test reveals, but there's really no way to know unless you ask, for your results and kind of what kicked you out. And they may not be willing to give you that information. But I will say that companies get themselves in a lot of hot water because if they're using the personality test by itself to determine whether or not you are qualified for the job, that isn't, that increases them for, saying that that's a biased way to make a decision. And it's not a good way. You need to look at a combination of things when you are deciding whether or not to hire someone. So I'm going to move on and then we'll take a few questions later. So behavioral based questions or situational questions. These questions can be very challenging to people who don't know how to answer them. So you want to use the PAR format or CAR or even STAR, but I like to use PAR because you talk about the problem, the action, and result. So it's really when I ask the question, I'm looking for you to tell me what the situation was, what you did, and then what happened. So you're going to focus on this, focus on the PAR format when you're answering your questions. Now, when you're recalling your career stories, use the PAR format because you can put them in the problem, the action, and the result, and then you flip it to wrap. And that is how you develop your resume bullet. You put the result first, and then you talk about the problem and the action that you took. Okay. All right, so here's a PAR scenario. So the branch was underperforming. So this was the problem. The branch was underperforming due to lack of services and customer care. So they needed to find out why the customers weren't utilizing their resources. Okay, so they created a satisfaction survey to gather feedback on the services they wanted to see implemented. And then they began offering periodic check-ins and introducing new features. And by doing that, they got 100 customers to return within 3 months. So then what that would look like on your resume, because that's how you answer the interview question, right? Tell me about a time you, it could be work with a team to solve a problem or a time that you were able to recover lost accounts or something like that, right? On the resume, it looks like reacquired 100 customers and underperforming branch in 90 days by conducting a satisfaction survey and offering new product features. That is how it would look on the resume. So PAR format to answer interview questions, flip the PAR format to put it on your resume. Okay, see, that's simple enough. Simple enough. All right, so here's some interview mistakes that people are actually making. Being late. So one thing, when you're on these virtual interviews, log in ahead of time to make sure that your system is working, that you can get it, that you're not worried and scrambling at the last minute trying to find a password. Y'all were late getting in here today. You don't want to be late getting into your interview as well. You want to make sure that you're there, you're on time, and you want to try to beat your interviewer there. All right. So I would say don't log in more than, 10, 15 minutes ahead of time. Even 5 minutes is good, but you want to log in early enough to where if there is a technical issue, and really if they send you a link, say days ahead, go ahead and access that link. So if you're having some trouble logging in, you can already reach out to the recruiter or the hiring manager or whatever to let them know that you're having those issues. Right? You can make sure that they already know and they can help you so that you're not putting the pressure on before your interview. You're ready. Make sure that your backgrounds aren't messy. Get rid of the distractions. I have 2 dogs, so I have to make sure that I close them up on the other side of the house because otherwise they would try to jump in my lap and everything. You want to make sure that your attire is appropriate. I say dress at the top and the bottom. I have had interviews with people where they've had to get up because it was an emergency and they weren't dressed appropriately at the bottom. Okay, so you want to make sure that you dress fully, and it also gets you in the right mindset of interviewing. So dress at the top and bottom. You also want to make sure that you don't have things on that are busy formats. So I wear a lot of bracelets. If you see my pictures, I have all these bracelets up and down my arm. It's usually 5 or 6 of them. they make noise, and I like to be jingling and clacking around, but when I'm interviewing or when I'm doing, sessions, I make sure that I take that off. So that would be considered inappropriate attire. You don't want to do anything that distracts from your face or distracts or makes, the screen look weird. So you may not want to wear a whole lot of stripes or busy patterns, or, or whatever the case. You can wear bright colors. You don't necessarily have to wear suits. Know the audience, know what the expectation is. If you don't know, ask the recruiter. You make mistakes by not asking questions. When you don't ask me questions and I'm interviewing you, I'm going to assume you don't care. You don't care about this job. You don't care about yourself because you're not asking questions to make sure that I'm right for you. When you don't follow up and ask questions. Say thank you after your interview. I know some people say, well, they don't read thank you notes or whatever. I read them. I have a stack of thank you notes where people actually mailed me actual thank you cards. So I like that type of stuff. You don't know if you're going to run into a recruiter or a hiring manager that has a thing for thank you notes. I keep cards. And so to me, but also when you say thank you, it is a way to follow up with questions. It's a way to stay engaged with the person interviewing you. So always use that opportunity to be able to reach out. Okay. Always ask questions, always follow up. And then you can ask for feedback. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, because sometimes there are policies that prevent people from giving you a lot of feedback, but they may be able to tell you the one thing that you were missing. The one, they may be able to tell you that they have another position for you. A lot of times my number two candidate was number one when I had another role that was open or something that was similar. We passed people's information around the team. There were 20 recruiters on the team with me. So we shared candidates all the time. Like, hey, I interviewed this great person. They're lacking this and my manager really wants this, but yours doesn't need it. So, do you want to talk to them? Here's my interview notes. And then that person is fast tracked through the process. So think about how you follow up and how you behave when you're rejected, because sometimes your rejection is your redirection. All right, so here I'm going to give you a prompt right now that you can use for your interviews, that you can come up with interview questions based on the job posting. Okay, wouldn't that be awesome that you know the exact questions that you're probably going to be answered? I can get you really close. I'm not guaranteeing that I know every single question, but there's an opportunity there for you to ask, questions that are prep for interviews, asking questions that are based on the actual job posting. So what I want to do is, before we get to that, take out your phones really, really quick. Okay. So before I give you this next prompt, I want to give you this gift. This is how to ace your next virtual interview. It is a guide. It has tons of information. It's going to go into more detail based on what I shared with you today. I want you to take out your phone, open your camera, and then hover over the QR code. And then I want you to use code interview. And that is how you're going to grab your freebie. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to scan the QR code, type in code interview, grab your freebie. You have to answer just a few questions. You want to talk about how I answered your question, how I deliver the information, because this is going to help me develop more training for you. So go ahead and take a few minutes to do that. And when you've completed it, I want you to come back to the chat and comment done. All right, so everybody give me ones if they understand. All right, good deal, good deal. If you are using if you are using your phone to actually be on this training, then send me a message. I'm going to force you to go on LinkedIn. Send me a message on LinkedIn, and then I will send you the information. I'll send you the link so that you can actually do it. All right, I'll give you about 2 minutes. When I start seeing the majority of the dones, then I'll go ahead and stop. But take your time and complete that and grab your freebie. Let me see. I may be able to grab it. You can, if Brian, if you have it that you can put in the chat, yeah, that would be good. Because I thought I had it, but I don't. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, thank you, Allison. I'll put the link in the chat. All right, I'm gonna send this to people who are saying they didn't get it. So Brian put it in the chat for you, but I don't know. All right, remember to comment done. All right, it looks like a lot of you are coming in done. I'll give it maybe one more minute. I see some more people popping in done. All right, let me know if y'all enjoying yourselves. We're about to wrap up in just a second. Like I said, I am so glad you guys are here. All right, we are done, done, done. All right, I'll wait for a few more. All right, a few more. All right, got it. Y'all let me know if y'all getting the download. You should have your download instantly once you follow the code interview and just answer just a few short questions. You should have it. And make sure that you read through the document. Make sure that you read through the guide. Read through it. I want you to ask questions. My email address, my contact information is in there. I want you to talk to me. Let me know what you need. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, good deal. All right, so it looks like the majority of people are coming on in. So I'll move right along. So here's the prompt that you use for interview questions. Again, if y'all want to screenshot this, you can screenshot it. But like I said, I'm going to send each of you the recording of this session, and then I'll also send you the prompts. You'll get the prompts. So that way you can just kind of copy and paste them and you don't have to type them back over. All right. So what you can say, and remember, this is going to be based on that job posting that we used from Amazon, the operations manager position. So you can tell ChatGPT, I'm interviewing for this position at Amazon, provide 10 interview questions based on this job description, and then you insert the job description. You really just, you shift and enter just so it'll move it down, and then you just can copy the job description in that same message. Okay. So these are the results that you'll get from that. So you see how most of the questions are going to be based on those themes that we talked about earlier, right? So you've got one for leadership and team management. You got one for project management, productivity and efficiency. So it's based on the keywords that are in that job posting. So ChatGPT is pulling these questions. So can you provide an answer? Provide an example of a time that you successfully mentored and motivated a diverse team of salaried and hourly employees. It asked that because it said that this position will have a responsibility of managing salary and hourly employees. So it's asking a question based on that. Describe a large project that you led that had a significant impact on your site or region, because this position is an operations manager that handles projects region. So there you go. And then if you look at the one for adaptability, describe a time when you had to make data-driven decisions to solve a complex problem in your operation. How did you gather and analyze the data? Because there's a data analysis and problem-solving element to this position. So you want to talk about the time that you were able to pull a report and you saw that maybe people weren't signing up for something after the first 6 months, or they were dropping off after a certain period, or not making payments after a certain period, or whatever. So you had to make a change based on the data that you pulled. So those are the types of scenarios that you're thinking about from your career that you can list either on your resume or that you can speak to in your interview. Okay, so are you guys going to start using this prompt so you can start prepping for your interviews, so you can at least have an idea of what kind of questions asked? Yeah, because that way you're not going into these interviews blind. Okay, so you know how to predict the types of questions. You're not going to get it down to 100%, but if you get comfortable answering these types of questions on your own, you're going to be even more comfortable answering stuff going forward, because you already, you're in the rhythm of answering these questions with the PAR format. Even if they ask you a question that's yes or no, you're not going to answer just yes or no. You need to give answers. If they're asking you something about experience that you don't have, right? Then quickly move into some, you can say, if they say, do you have experience in, working with Oracle? No, I don't have experience working with Oracle, but I do work in SAP and I know they're very similar. I used SAP to do da 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 da. And from my, the work that I did, I was able to produce this result. This is how you get them from thinking about, oh, well, she doesn't have this, or this person is not qualified. Because remember, if you weren't qualified, they wouldn't have invited you there. So you belong there. Okay, so remember that. I don't care if you need to put a sticky note somewhere where you wake up every day, where to apply for those jobs, you need to put a sticky note up there and say, I belong there. I belong there. So if you're in that interview, I belong there. I'm enough. I'm enough. I have enough already. I've already proven it. I made it. Right? So that'll kind of take the pressure off yourself. You've already made it there. All you got to do is verbalize what you did. The interview is just to confirm the decision that we've already made in our heads. We've already decided that you're qualified for the job. Right? So if you get invited to an interview, you can assume that you are eligible for that job offer. Okay? You are eligible for it. All you've got to do is confirm it. Confirm what they already know. All right, so here's some questions that you can ask after the fact and what they kind of will help you uncover. So ask, how has this position evolved since it was created? And so that'll help you decide whether or not this is a dead-end job. If it's been the same for the past 10, 15 years, I don't know, with no innovation, then you're probably going to be doing some outdated stuff. You're probably going to be, you may get stagnant, right? And then if you start seeing signs of them having financial problems, you've seen reports where they've done a whole bunch of layoffs, you may want to ask those questions about that. You can ask, how is success measured in this role? So that way you have a clear understanding of how your metrics are determined. You can even ask, when you rated somebody as a high performer or categorized somebody as high performer, what were some of the things that they did? So that way they can give you the blueprint of what to do, right? Ask them things like, what is the top priority for this role in the next 3 months? You can see then if they're working on a big project, you may be expecting to work a lot of hours and doing a lot of travel depending on that type of role. All right, and then more questions that you can ask. What's the next step in the process? Of course, what's the projected start date? Is there a structured orientation process? That way you can find out whether or not they're just going to throw you to the wolves. Okay. Do they have a structured process where you expected to learn certain things, where you've got, SOPs that you can refer to, all of that. You want to see how structured it is. Always say thank you My rule of thumb is sending a thank you via email within 48 hours. If you can do it that same day, do it the same day. You want to personalize those messages for each person who interviewed you. Don't send everybody a plain copy and paste. You should be taking notes and recalling things that each person talked to you about and referencing that in your thank you. Make sure you're addressing the right person in the right company. Make sure you're doing your spell check and your grammar check. Now, asking for feedback, that being in limbo and not knowing, like, that period between your interview and then finding out whatever, or you applying and finding out whatever, it could be hell because you don't know. Being in the unknown is usually terrible. So not knowing where you stand, it could be frustrating and create a whole lot of fear. So when you understand those hiring processes, mean you're asking the questions that you need to ask, it helps you avoid those shortcomings that you may have in the future. It may help you to make adjustments along the way. If they say, well, we were really looking for this, okay, then now you know that you need to do a better job at explaining that if you have that experience, or you may need to just get that type of experience. Okay, but I'll always say thank you. It's not going to hurt you to say thank you. Just like you can speak to somebody and they don't speak back, you can send a thank you and they don't speak back. But do the thank you, because sometimes that could be what tips the scale, and they say, oh, well, this person is really professional. If they followed up with us, they'll follow up with customers too. So your thank you can uncover a lot more about you than you realize. Not everybody is going to appreciate them the same way a cover letter is not going to be appreciated. But I've never not hired somebody because they sent me a thank you, because they sent a cover letter. Okay, but whatever, the choice is yours. Everybody's not going to read them, but make sure that you're doing what you can do to stand out. All right, so I've got a group coaching program. It's called Resign by Design. Remember, I told you I was going to be selling. And so it has weekly interactive sessions. So I teach these sessions live. I also do a career marketing overhaul. So you get a resume, you get a brand new resume, you get a brand new LinkedIn profile, and you get support with networking. So you see, from week 1, we go all the way to week 12. We cover every part of the job search. And then we also do the next 4 weeks. After the 12 weeks is over, you get 4 weeks of Q&A. Well, we will be on a call similar to this. You can ask whatever questions you have about your job search. Those are 1-hour calls. They will be weekly for that. And then you get to email me individually if you have specific questions about your job searching. And then we also have job search support. So there will be a community, a group of other professionals that you will be working with, that you can have your accountability partners and all of that for this. This is how you're preparing from start to finish, preparing for your job search, learning how to brand yourself. Like I said, and it includes the career marketing documents. This alone, if you were to do each one of these with me, each session, so you book 12 sessions with me, you got a resume, you got a LinkedIn profile, and all that, you would be looking at around $8,000. 8,000, close to $9,000. Okay. That's what it would be to actually work with me to do all of these things if you were getting them individually. So to package this in a group, that, to me, that was the best thing to be able to do, so I can reach more people, so I can help more people land those 6-figure opportunities or those higher paying opportunities that they want. Like I said, it includes interview coaching as well. So you do have an opportunity to work with, to get a mock interview, but to work with me to learn how to refine your interview skills so that you know how to answer these questions. And each participant will get questions and practice that is related to whatever industry they're in. Okay. So you won't have just the generic questions. There will be questions that you as the individual should be able to ask based on the types of jobs that you're targeting. So here's what some of my past clients have said. John worked with me. He's now a regional operations director. He was able to increase his salary by over 70% by working with me. All right. And then Jessica was in HR for about 10 years. She took a career break. So she had a 2-year gap on her resume. And we were able to work together to get her the job that she wanted at the salary that she wanted as well. We researched her market value and did all of that, so she was prepared to have those conversations. Kate was able to get a promotion and work, and now she's working as a talent acquisition manager, but she was a coordinator when we first started working together. And she was able to double her salary. We worked together and work from home. Okay. So there are opportunities for you to grow and do the things that you want to do, because that is my motto. I like to work with mid-career to senior level professionals, helping them escape their careers that are no longer serving them, that are no longer fulfilling to them, and helping them to land those roles that are higher paying, that give them the opportunities to branch into leadership that they want without having to go get another degree, without having to get another certification. Okay. So here's how you can sign up. So if you want to join this program and work with me for 12 weeks and then an extra 4 weeks of support, if you want to work with me, you can comment or you can send me a private message saying resign, and I will send you the information to sign up. The full program cost is $4,997, but you can split that into 4 payments, or we can do a personal financing plan. If this doesn't work for you and you still want to do it and you want some type of financing, let's talk about it. But generally speaking, there's 4 payments of roughly 1,300. You make those 4 payments, you get access to all of the materials as you go. Paying in full, you get access to all of the materials right away. All right. So if you're ready, to up level, you need to be in there. You need to be in this program because, like I said, there are plenty of people. I just worked with a client and helped them negotiate their salary. We worked from the application process on into the interview. We did interview prep, we did networking, and we negotiated the salary. The offer was accepted yesterday. So, and we got them to come up, 10K after they told them like, nope, this is best and final. Nope, we got them to come up 10K. So if you want to work in a community with other professionals so that you don't feel alone, because job searching can be very isolating, then, let's talk about it. Let me know that you want to join the program. All right. Now, if you're not quite ready for the program, but you want some support with your job search, you can use this QR code to get into the Ultimate Career Kickstart Kit. You can get in this kit. There's a lot of stuff I'm doing 15% off. That's to date only by using code CAREER. Okay, you use the code CAREER. When you scan this QR code, it is $97 with 15% off. Now, in this bundle, it includes resume and cover letter training. You also get some templates for your resume and your cover letter. You get a worksheet that helps you build your accomplishments, LinkedIn profile. You're going to get a PAR format sheet so you can develop your PAR statements. You get 30 plus interview follow-up questions. And then you also get a networking guide and plan. And then I give you the 100 tips for navigating a modern job search. So again, that is the Ultimate Career Kickstart Kit, and that is $97. Again, if you just do your camera over, just hover over, get to the link the same way that you did the other QR code, and you can get 15% off today using code CAREER. All right, now this is how you work with me. If you are not connected with me on LinkedIn, I am going to put my link in here. I am at Ashley J. Watkins. But I'm going to put the link to my LinkedIn in the chat. I want you all to connect with me and let me know where you found me so I can know that you were here. All right, so there is the link. I want you guys to connect with me. You can find me online at rightstepresumes.com. And you can also email me at info@rightstepresumes.com. So I want to see those connections. Connect with me and let me know whether or not you're ready to join the program or whether or not you want to purchase other digital products. There are plenty of those available. So does anybody have any final questions before we wrap up? I see there's one: after an interview, my recruiter asked that all communications not go directly to interviewers. Should I be thanking people or asking for feedback through the recruiter? This seems a bit controlling, but when it is in, yeah. So when you're following up, follow the process. Most times my hiring managers didn't want any direct contact from candidates just because there's compliance issues, and they didn't want to reveal any information that they shouldn't be discussing in the interview, just to keep more structure in the interview process. But you can definitely take this information and send it to the recruiter if you have questions, even if you have thank yous, and let them just forward the message. All right, so in the Career Kickstart Kit, That's within it. You get 15 plus digital downloads. So you're going to get a resume training, a cover letter training. You'll get a resume template and a cover letter template so that you can plug in your information after the training. You also get a worksheet that helps you build your accomplishment statements. And then LinkedIn profile resources, you get videos, all types of things. And then you get common interview questions. There's like 30 plus interview follow-up questions. You get a networking guide, and then you also get 100 tips for navigating the modern job search. So that is what's in the Career Kickstart Kit. And this is what is in the Resign by Design group coaching program. You get a career marketing overhaul. So like I said, you get your resume, LinkedIn profile. You also get interview coaching, and then you get start to finish job search support. So there's weekly training. There's weekly training. I deliver that training with the group, and we'll have interactive activities getting you ready for that. So if you're wanting to join the Resign by Design, go ahead and send me either a private message or put it in the comments. Resign. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, that is it. Thank you guys so much for being here. All right. Thank you so much. Any final questions before I drop off? Any final questions? All right. Well, thank you so much.